Sitting Bull was born into the Lakota Sioux Nation around 1831. From a young age, he was trained as a warrior and a spiritual leader. He believed strength came from vision, patience, and loyalty to his people. As the United States pushed west, treaties were broken, and Lakota land was taken. Sitting Bull refused to sign away his homeland. He warned that surrender would mean the end of their way of life. In 1876, his vision foretold soldiers falling from the sky. Weeks later, Lakota and Cheyenne warriors defeated U.S. forces at the Battle of the Little Bighorn. But retaliation followed. The U.S. Army hunted him relentlessly. He fled to Canada, living in exile for years to protect his people. Eventually, hunger forced surrender. Sitting Bull was imprisoned, then confined to a reservation. In 1890, fearing his influence, U.S. authorities ordered his arrest. During the attempt, he was killed by native police. Sitting Bull did not fight for conquest. He fought so his people could remain who they were. As a young Shawnee boy, Tecumseh watched his father die during violent battles as American settlers pushed deeper into native lands. The loss stayed with him forever. While many tribal leaders signed away territory to the United States, Tecumseh refused to surrender what he believed belonged to all native nations together. He traveled across thousands of miles, building a powerful alliance between tribes who had once been enemies. Tecumseh warned that if native peoples remained divided, they would lose everything. His courage and leadership terrified American officials, who saw him as one of the greatest threats on the frontier. In 1811, while Tecumseh was away recruiting allies, American forces attacked his village at Prophetstown, destroying homes and supplies. The war soon expanded into the War of 1812, where Tecumseh fought alongside the British against the United States. But in 1813, during the Battle of the Thames, Tecumseh was killed in combat. After his death, his alliance collapsed and native resistance in the region was shattered. Do you think Tecumseh could have changed American history if he had lived longer? Full story in the comments. Osceola was born around 1804 and became one of the most respected leaders of the Seminole people in Florida. As American settlers pushed deeper into Seminole lands, the U.S. government demanded that native tribes leave their homes and move west. Osceola refused. Determined to defend his people, he led daring attacks during the Second Seminole War, frustrating a far larger American army. His courage and leadership turned him into a symbol of resistance. But in 1837, during what was supposed to be peace negotiations, Osceola was captured under a flag of truce. He was imprisoned and sent far from his homeland. Just months later, Osceola died in captivity at only 34 years old. Though he never saw freedom again, his fight inspired generations and remains one of the most powerful stories of Native American resistance. Was Osceola's capture a necessary wartime tactic, or a betrayal of trust? After the United States pushed westward in the 1800s, a devastating force swept across the plains. The Lakota watched their world shrink as soldiers, settlers, and railroads carved through their homeland. To many, I am known as Chief Red Cloud. This is what we faced. The land that fed our children and held the bones of our ancestors was taken piece by piece. Promises were broken almost as soon as they were written. Treaties meant to protect us became chains that trapped us on smaller and smaller land. Forts were built in the heart of our territory. They called it progress. We called it invasion. Our warriors fought not for conquest, but for survival. Then came Red Cloud's War. The only war America lost, when its forts were abandoned and our land was returned. But the pressure came back, stronger, heavier. Still, this is not a story of defeat. It is the story of a people who refused to vanish. If this happened once, how easily could it happen again? He was a man who fought not for conquest, but for peace. Born in 1840 in the Wallowa Valley of Oregon, Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce tribe grew up believing his people could live freely on their ancestral land. But when gold was discovered, the U.S. government broke its promises and ordered his tribe to move onto a reservation. Rather than submit, Joseph led his people on an incredible 1,400-mile journey toward freedom, across mountains, rivers, and frozen plains, pursued by the U.S. Army. His leadership, strategy, and compassion turned him into a legend of resistance. But after months of hardship, with his people starving and dying, he finally surrendered, saying, "I will fight no more forever." Chief Joseph spent the rest of his life advocating for his people's rights, never seeing his homeland again, but his courage and words still echo through history. Would you fight or surrender with dignity? Oshtish was a warrior of the Crow Nation. Her name meant finds them and kills them. Born in the mid-1800s, she lived in a world where survival meant strength, and Oshtish had plenty of it. She fought alongside Crow warriors in battle, most famously at the Battle of the Rosebud in 1876. When a fellow warrior was wounded, Oshtish rushed into gunfire and carried him to safety. Among the Crow, she was recognized as Bade, a respected identity for people who lived beyond traditional gender roles. She wore women's clothing, performed women's work, and still went to war. To her people, this wasn't contradiction, it was honor. But when U.S. authorities arrived, they tried to erase that identity. Officials forced Osceola and others to cut their hair, change their clothing, and abandon their way of life. The Crow resisted. Tribal leaders defended her, insisting she be allowed to live as she always had. Osceola survived not just war, but an attempt to rewrite who she was. He was more than a warrior. He became a legend. His name was Geronimo, the most feared Apache fighter in American history. Born in 1829, he lived through relentless attacks as U.S. and Mexican forces invaded Apache lands. But his life changed forever when Mexican soldiers massacred his wife, children, and mother. From that moment, he swore vengeance. Geronimo became known for his unmatched courage and near-supernatural survival. He led daring raids across the Southwest, slipping through mountains and deserts where no army could catch him. Soldiers said he could see into the future, vanish into thin air, and strike without warning. For decades, Geronimo resisted capture, outsmarting thousands of U.S. and Mexican troops. He finally surrendered in 1886, one of the last Apache leaders to do so. To some, he was a brutal enemy. To his people, he was the embodiment of resistance, refusing to bow to conquest. Geronimo's name still echoes today, symbol of fear to his foes but of freedom to his nation. After the Indian Removal Act passed in 1830, tribe after tribe across the Southeast was forced from their lands. It became known as the Trail of Tears, but in Florida, one tribe refused to go. The Seminoles didn't sign a treaty. They didn't surrender. When U.S. soldiers came to remove them, they burned their villages and vanished into the Everglades. What followed was a brutal 7-year guerrilla war. Thousands of troops sent into swamps they couldn't navigate. Over $30 million spent. No victory. The Seminoles struck fast, disappeared faster. They knew the land. The U.S. didn't. They couldn't be tracked, couldn't be caught. Eventually the government gave up. There was no peace treaty because the Seminoles never surrendered, and they never left. To this day, they remain in Florida, still sovereign, still free, still unconquered. Their story isn't just history, it's living proof of resilience. Like, share, and follow to keep stories like this alive. This man shot a U.S. Army officer point blank and walked free. His name was Plenty Horses, a Lakota Sioux who had just returned from years at the Carlisle Indian School, where native children were stripped of their language, culture, and identity. But when he came back to South Dakota, he returned to bloodshed. The Wounded Knee Massacre had just occurred. Hundreds of Lakota men, women, and children, unarmed, were gunned down by U.S. troops. Tensions were at a boiling point. And just days later, Plenty Horses approached Lieutenant Edward Casey and pulled the trigger. He was immediately arrested. The U.S. government wanted to make an example of him, charge him with murder. But then, something unexpected happened. His lawyers made a bold argument. If the U.S. was at war with the Lakota, then what Plenty Horses did wasn't murder. It was war. And the court agreed. In 1891, a jury acquitted him. Because convicting Plenty Horses would have meant admitting that the massacre at Wounded Knee wasn't just a tragedy, it was an act of war. Should he have been punished, or was justice served? Let us know in the comments.